New polling shows Bernie Sanders leading among Iowa caucus goers, and things don't appear to be quite so friendly between the Vermont senator and Elizabeth Warren.
Team Rising is here. Michael Starr Hopkins is a Democratic strategist, and Marshall Kosloff is media analyst. Two great friends of the show.
Gentlemen,
good to
happy
see you guys.
Monday.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having us.
All right, I have got to say, this is the weakest, I got to watch my language, but like the weakest fight I have seen in this campaign trail. So give people a little bit of background. So Bernie Sanders volunteers, there was a volunteer script that went to Politico.
Yeah.
They said that they were saying, if you're talking to a prospective Elizabeth Warren voter, you say she has, let's say,
people
direct
who
quote.
support her are highly educated, more affluent people who are going to show up and vote Democratic no matter what. She's bringing no new bases into the Democratic Party. Fact check. True.
Statement of empirical fact, Michael. And then Warren is out there saying that Bernie is trashing her, and now her campaign is fundraising off of this, being like, Bernie Sanders has launched a salvo. I mean, if you think this is trashing somebody, like, I got big news for you. Donald Trump is president of the United States, and you're trying to vote for him, run against him. What do you make of this whole thing?
I mean, this is kind of an act of desperation. I think we all kind of see through it.
Yeah.
I've worked on campaigns before where we've taken opportunities. A campaign's thrown us a bone, and we've just aggressively gone after it so that you kind of get some headlines and become more, more important in the news cycle. I think that's exactly what's going on. This is a non-story.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we have Elizabeth Warren actually responding directly to this, so let's take a listen to what she had to say.
I was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. Bernie knows me and has known me for a long time. He knows who I am, where I come from, what I have worked on and fought for, and the coalition and grassroots movement we're trying to build. Democrats want to win in 2020. We all saw the impact of the factionalism in 2016, and we can't have a repeat of that.
And that's actually kind of a nasty shot to take. She's basically accusing Bernie Sanders of giving us Donald Trump, which is about the nastiest shot you can take at a Democrat. It's just the whole thing. I'm not sure that this is good strategy on their part. I get the idea of we've got this thing, let's seize on it, let's fundraise it, let's make it a big media thing. I just think it makes her look weak that you can't even take the mildest of shots from a volunteer. It's kind of like it wasn't even from him.
Well, on 2 points. So one, I'm not in Bernie's camp or in Warren's camp, but it seems weird to me that they're highlighting these arguments because I read that, I was like, wait, those are good points. If a volunteer showed up at my door, I'd say, wait, actually, like, all three of those things are true. The polls are there, the demographics are there. That makes a lot of sense. And then two, her argument about this is the stuff that gave us Trump. Okay, then let's lay down and vote for Joe Biden then. Like, both arguments don't make any sense. Like, it's just...
I think, Michael, what it shows to me is that the Dems are so afraid of making a negative attack because that's been branded as Trumpian that we have gone through the mildest Democratic primary in a generation. I was saying this during the break. Some of the stuff that Hillary said about Obama was vicious, and the things that Obama said about Hillary was equally vicious. They were trashing each other all over the Iowa airwaves, and I mean, you haven't even sent 1/15 of that in this primary. And this is trashing somebody.
Yeah.
I think it's a big problem for them going throughout the primary.
Yeah, I mean, part of the primary process is steel sharpens steel, and we get kind of the first wave of the attacks, get them out of the way, so we're used to hearing them. That's not happening in this primary. Every time someone attacks someone, there's been kind of a negative effect on the polls because we're all so worried that by attacking each other, we're going to somehow re-elect Trump.
Right.
And so I think when you talk about this Elizabeth Warren kind of fake fight that's going on, this is more from the Warren camp because she recognizes Sanders is cannibalizing so much of what she sees as her vote, and so she needs those Sanders people to come over to her.
And her message,
She hurt herself. I mean, she was the one who, I'm with Bernie and then Medicare for all mess. I mean, that is what happened. Is progressives decided there was a clear choice in this race and consolidated around Bernie Sanders, and that's why he's in the position he's in Iowa. I agree with your point, Marshall, that this is bad strategy also because it highlights a very damaging argument against her. She's already in trouble in terms of electability. Her campaign is really trying to make the case that she would be the unifier, that she's the most electable. This is a very effective case, and I think accurate case against the idea that she would be the best to go up against Donald Trump. And by elevating it, she's just inserting that into the bloodstream of the national conversation in a way that it really, frankly, hasn't been.
Yeah, and another problem here too is that this is just an argument. If demographics and polling are off the table as arguments, that just helps Mayor Pete. That just helps Joe Biden, because the areas where they're weakest, where Elizabeth Warren is strongest, are their voting records, are the worldviews they bring to the table, the coalition they bring about. If she's competing with Mayor Pete for votes, well, guess what? Mayor Pete's issue is that he can't bring out African American voters.
Right.
His
Are we
issue
not
is
allowed
that
to say that?
Yeah,
Is that off the table?
And I'd love to see Donald Trump attacking Elizabeth Warren on that lines, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No, it really does. The whole thing is really foolish. I mean, at the same time, I'm sure everybody saw this, but it bears highlighting because it's just such a crazy poll. Des Moines Register, one of the most accurate polls. I think it's predicted the nominee, it has predicted the winner of the Iowa caucuses almost any time out. Just shortly, a month before the Iowa caucus, we have Bernie Sanders sitting at 20%, Elizabeth Warren at 17%, Pete Buttigieg at 16%, Joe Biden at 15%. A virtual tie with a margin of error, 3.7%. Obviously a surge there for Bernie, Michael. I think Jennifer Palmieri said that the winner of this poll, 6 times in a row, had gone on to win the nomination. Is it different this time?
I think it is. I actually have a column coming out for The Hill where I talk about the fact that I've never really been a big Sanders backer. I've been kind of critical of him, but he has created a movement, and it goes to back to what you were talking about earlier. I think he's actually starting to take that Obama mantle and take it into 2020, and I think he actually may start to coalesce support and bring in people like myself who aren't really Sanders type of voters, but want to make sure that we win. And it's going to be interesting to see how he manages to bring a more unifying message, because on one side he's been a little divisive in terms of talking about equality and income inequality, but it hasn't brought over moderates. And I think he's starting to pivot into more of a general election strategy.
Well, it's interesting you say that about Obama, because the case that I was making is there was always this thought with Kamala Harris and Cory Booker in particular that if they could just do well in Iowa, and then things would flip for them in the way that it did for Obama. And I actually think that Sanders is the person who can most effectively make that case, not obviously based on his identity, but on the fact that he has very high favorability. You got a lot of people out there who would like to support him if they felt like they had the permission. And at the same time, his campaign has been doing the work on the ground. That doesn't just happen, right? You have to have laid the groundwork like Barack Obama did. I think he's in position to have that same kind of surge if he's able to perform according to the polls in Iowa and New Hampshire.
Yeah, it's just hard because part of the problem here is if you're looking at the poll we were seeing, that you have Mayor Pete up there, you have Joe Biden up there. It's not going to be a runaway win for any of them. So I don't think it'd be one thing if there was a sort of if there was very low expectations. So Iowa was huge for him in 2016 because people thought Hillary was going to run away with it.
Yeah.
But I think if he gets a narrow win, I'm not sure that's going to cause the sweeping permission people are looking for.
That's why he has to win New Hampshire at the same time. At the same time,
it also depends though on how Biden does.
Right.
Because if Sanders wins and Biden is fourth, right?
Yeah.
And this is our Mr. Electable. This is the guy that we're supposedly anointing. I think that's also, that dynamic is also important to keep in mind.
Speaking of Obama, I wanted to throw this in here. Jim Messina, who was the Obama campaign director in 2012, actually, basically the first real opening shot from Obama world now that Bernie is up top, saying that he thinks Donald Trump is dreaming against running against Bernie Sanders. Michael, what do you think?
I don't think so, because what Sanders has been really good at doing is talking about populism in a way that's very authentic. And what Trump has done is talked about this faux populism that actually is more of an establishment, elitist style populism that doesn't really exist. And so I think Sanders has been, while his message hasn't been perfect, I think the overall themes of tackling poverty and making it a more inclusive country, I think those are really starting to resonate. And I don't think Trump really wants to go against Sanders in that kind of way. A Trump-Biden matchup is much more on his playing field.
Right? Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's mixed because I think the Trump campaign probably wants to go against Bernie Sanders because they've been playbooking this, right? Socialism, Venezuela. They're the people.
30 years.
But that's what we said about Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think though that on paper at least, I think that the issues that I think the issues are where people want it to be. He's an extremist. He's a socialist. He's going to do this or that. I do think that the way that Sanders conducts himself is going to not resound well with Trump. As in, Sanders is really good at talking about structure. He's really good at talking about not like the policy detail wonkery of Medicare for all, but it's just the idea that we shouldn't live in a country where people can't afford to pay for their healthcare.
The values and the emotion.
In a funny way, I think Elizabeth Warren is actually a better match for Trump in those areas, because it would very easily go into this sort of technicality-based, less big, less structural way that would resound well with.
It's like a thematic
Yeah.
argument.
Well, I love the way Sanders hit back at the Jim Messina shot. He was like, "Oh, I thought he was over there advising the Conservative Party."
Yeah, that's right.
UK.
He really was.
How'd that work out?
Who was he advising? David
Theresa
Cameron.
May and David Cameron, both of them.
Well, they won, so I guess he's got something.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Stick with us. We'll have more for you right after this.